Welcome to 24 Hour Sports. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. And today I want to revisit some of those draft takes that we had beginning in this draft process. A lot of things that we thought at the beginning, a lot of mock drafts, a lot of big boards that we had, they're now shifting. And you wonder why as we get closer. The draft is just about 2 weeks away. Why as we get closer and closer? Why are all these players in different values, different ranges? Why are teams starting to come out and say certain things about these players and starting to show who do they like more than another prospect? So I want to start off with one of the bigger takes, and that's that Bryce Young's too small. Now, we made all of this hype and all of this room, and everyone thought, Josh McCown doing the breakdown of CJ Stroud on the YouTube channel, all of the representatives at the Pro Day, those are good indicators. But I think now as we get closer and closer to it, and people, we've all kind of thought the same thing. I think CJ Stroud, he fits that size profile. We talk about the guys that Frank Reich has coached as far as in the quarterback room. He fits that. But teams are just scared of the ceiling. Now, when I'm talking about this, I'm not indicating a player is better or worse than another player. This is not about the player themselves, but as far as where they're going, what I'm seeing, and what I feel comfortable in saying, I think Bryce Young is now going to be the number one pick. Like I said, you look at the film, and you've had months, since the season ended, these guys, these teams who are all in the ideology of getting up to that first pick, they did that, and they did their research, extensive research at that. So when you watch the tape, I see Bryce Young, and everyone says smaller Patrick Mahomes, you see some of Joe Burrow. I've heard it all as far as considering Bryce Young, but I think when I look at him, I see a guy who can make all the throws. And what you really want from a quarterback, I'm gonna be honest, you want a guy who doesn't limit your scheme. And I think with Bryce Young having the mobility, now he's not an open field runner. He's not going to break away for 20, 30 yards consistently like Anthony Richardson can. But I do think he doesn't have any limitations on your scheme. You can stretch the field. You can give him a lot of looks. He's a smart football player. And he played in the SEC. I don't throw that tag out there just to make an excuse for guys. And I've seen that a lot. He's an SEC guy. We should take him here. But I do think we have to factor it in, looking at some of the complex defenses that he's seen, some of the pass rush that he's seen. So I like CJ Stroud too. Now this is getting me into my second take that I want to revisit. Now, I've been watching Anthony Richardson, and I've been watching more and more of him. And what I've come to believe is I don't see the guy that a lot of people are talking about when they say not a smart football player. Looks really inexperienced in the pocket. I think the truest, fairest evaluation I can give of Anthony Richardson, I think he has made some mistakes in the pocket. But I think from what he is, being a one-year starter, he's far more advanced than you would ever expect. If you listen to what people say about Anthony Richardson and then you go cut on the tape, you watch a whole game. You watch the LSU game. You watch the Texas A&M game. You watch the even Utah game, and we get into that and we deep dive into those mechanics, into what he can do, the throws he can make. I think you feel really comfortable about taking him as that sort of project quarterback and working with him. Now understand, if you want a guy who's going to come in day one, I can understand why the Houston Texans, if they take CJ Stroud, that can be the case to me. You say we don't have to do as much work, and it's not even saying that we want to do the work, that we're patient enough to do the work. A quarterback, I believe, can always fix things. Now, it's about the quarterback's work ethic. It's about the coaching staff around him. If they're patient, like I said, is he really a guy who can learn? And I think you watch Anthony Richardson, you see some of those things from game one. Like I said, he came out game one against Utah, balled out. Everybody was on everyone's radar. We're talking number one pick type hype. And then we get into some of those other games and we look at the statistics. We look at all of these things, all of these variables. And I think with the quarterbacks in this situation, in this draft, I think the variables play the biggest part. Because I look at Anthony Richardson, I look at the people around him, and I'm not saying he had a terrible supporting cast, but some of the play calls, some of the things he went against, they weren't in his favor. Now, I understand you want a quarterback when things aren't in his favor, and I think that's Bryce Young, why he makes the case for me, because when everything's out of Bryce Young's favor, he's still made plays. We have to understand, this is one of a poor Alabama team that we saw fielded this year. He still made plays. He still came out and won games. Didn't get to the playoff, but he did what he could. And I think that's the biggest thing to root for. Everybody talked about the size, but as we get closer and closer, I think they're focusing on a football player, and I don't see as much concerns about that size. It's there. You can't ignore it. But those are my 2 takes. And now I want to get into another take that I have for this draft because I think it's pretty interesting. Now, as I sit here and look at this draft board, and I've looked at just about all of the top 6-7 guys, offensive line wise, who can go. And I want to make the take. I want to be the one to hear say it now. Like I said, I'm not saying these players are better, but if this pick was made, I feel very comfortable. And that's Darnell Wright or Broderick Jones. If Darnell Wright or Broderick Jones is the first offensive lineman off the board, I would not be surprised. And I think a lot of people, you've heard me say that, and you're like, whoa, what is he talking about? Watch the tape on a Darnell Wright. Watch the tape on a Broderick Jones. And Broderick Jones is an interesting one to me because, like I said, his technique to me is all over the place, the hand placement, everything. But I think he moves. Has the frame. We talk about those measurements. Some teams really like those measurements. I think he has the ideal measurements. Now, understand, Paris Johnson is nice. I love Paris Johnson. If I'm taking a guy off the board first, it would be Paris Johnson. But we have to think of the scenarios, some of the takes that we've seen. And Darnell Wright is shooting up the boards. Now, it's interesting to say if he would be the first offensive lineman off the board, but I think he could. Now, overall, what I'm seeing where I would have him at, I think his ceiling is possibly, to me right now, 13 at the Jets. Now, if he goes higher than that, it's gonna be a long day for those GMs, for those evaluators, gonna be getting it. But I think you just sit down, you relax, you look at Darnell Wright, you look at his body of work, you look at his film. Now, I think he projects as a right tackle, but also he played some left tackle at Tennessee. So we just have to take those kind of things into account. DeJuan Jones is a guy who's moving up as well. I think people are kind of split on DeJuan Jones. I think he's a pretty solid tackle, but they're split. Anton Harrison, some people are souring on him. But I think Darnell Wright, outside of, I like those 4. I think those 4 are kind of locked in for me. Now, Paris Johnson, Broderick, and Darnell Wright. Now, I think Peter Skoronski is a guy who could still play tackle, but he's being projected as a guard, and I understand all of the reasoning. But if I get him, I would not hesitate one bit to try him at tackle for my football team. And I want to get into my last take that I'm revisiting. That's the fact that Will Anderson would be the first non-quarterback off the board. Now, it's kind of tough for me to see a scenario where he isn't. I'm going to be completely honest. But when I watch Tyree Wilson, I think he makes a strong case. In the league, we talk about that Trayvon Walker effect, how he bumped up, even though some people think Aiden Hutchinson was the better pick. I think that he makes a very strong case. Length, size, power, having all of that. Now, he can refine some of those moves. He can get add more into his arsenal of pass rush moves. But as far as what we have right now, and the craziest thing that I've heard about Tyree Wilson is that coaches, coaching staff, evaluators, they just see a guy who's 6'6", 280, whatever we want to get him. They see that guy, and they just think that he doesn't know what he's doing. He doesn't know what he doesn't know, and that can be a positive. That could be a negative, because is he getting coached and he just can't, adhere to what he's being coached to do? Or is he just not being coached to our level of coaching that we have in our room? So I think that's a very interesting conundrum, something we talk about. The Cardinals have an interesting decision to make. A lot of teams have an interesting decision to make. The Tennessee Titans, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, Green Bay Packers, Baltimore Ravens. This is getting very interesting. I wanted to revisit some of those draft takes. Let me know a draft take that was initially the thing and something that you think has really changed, or somebody that you soured on, somebody that you've been higher on. Just to throw it out there, Will Levis, Cam Smith, those type of guys was very high in the pre-draft process, but now as we get into it, guys are starting to sour. Seeing Will Levis out of the top 10 a lot. He can go 5, he can go 4, he can go 20, he can go 19. It's a lot of scenarios. So I just want to know what you guys think in the comments. This is how I feel up to date. about these draft prospects and these certain ones, and how I feel about these takes that I initially had. And it's starting to sour a bit, it's starting to change a bit, and I'm starting to have a different perspective on these things. But if you made it to this point, thank you for watching. As always, don't forget to subscribe. We out.